Good morning. In the upcoming interview you're about to see, I sit down and chat to Rich Tabor about three things: the lack of responsive controls in Gutenberg, full site editing, and the future of block themes. Rich, if you don't already know him, works at Automattic, and he's a product manager there, and he's helping steer the Gutenberg project, specifically around site editing and Gutenberg. It's quite a long interview, but I kept most of it in because I think there's some real gold dust in there. Hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you at the end for a quick catch up. Today I wanted to kind of talk to you about this idea of intrinsic design, and it's probably because I hang out in a lot of the sort of WordPress forums, and it's probably the number one issue where people moan about Gutenberg is the lack of responsive controls in the core blocks, and it's probably led to a lot of the third-party block libraries being developed, probably. And then Justin Tadlock wrote that article, which I'll put in the description below of this video, which is well worth reading, where he talks about this concept of intrinsic design. So I've got some questions, and some of these questions,
Yes.
I asked for questions that people have asked me to ask you these questions. So
All right.
I guess if we wind back to the initial decisions not to include things like not to include like breakpoint control within Gutenberg, can you just explain? You weren't part of the team at this point, but can you explain, do you understand some of the logic behind that?
Yeah, I do. I've probably floated back and forth across the line between supporting a more, I don't know, traditional responsiveness support versus the intrinsic styling. But I do lean more towards not needing them. I would say, it's tough. When you publish to other social media platforms, say Instagram or Snapchat, or where you're publishing and adding content onto other images, you're not thinking about what happens on mobile or desktop view. It's just all there in one sort of editing experience.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that WordPress is that sort of platform, but I believe moving towards that sort of simplicity in editing in the same fashion that where things just resize or things become on top of each other or stacked on a certain media query point that's defined by the content, not by an integer value. I think that that's probably an easier editing experience and more towards the future of publishing. Whereas historically, media queries could be anything, and it could determine whether or not content shows or not, or stack it or not. But then it's kind of irrelevant on what the content inside of it is. It's more of a hard focused style versus dependent on the content. So I feel like intrinsic is the way forward. Not saying that we won't have other additional controls. I do think that there is some needed flexibility. Some of the width controls within 6.2 really lean in on the intrinsic design and really start adding more flexibility on that. But there are definitely times when I find like using the columns block, because there is a media query that does snap it, is more helpful than a row for now. I think that eventually we can add enough control to where you can have some flexibility there, though, on the rows, for example.
Yeah. And my view on the third party block libraries that kind of label themselves as page builders is that a lot of those are kind of meeting that development demand to add those extra controls in. Is there any kind of, do you think that's not a good thing or a bad thing, but do you think that's muddied the water for end users a little bit?
I think it makes it harder to edit for sure. If you're clicking a phone icon and you're trying to just edit based on that idea and then moving back to desktop, I think it's fine, for developers. For us who have grew up essentially doing it that way, in the developer space. But I think there's a better future where we don't have to do that. It becomes more natural and more of a, like if we're using min and max values for spacing and it's responsive spacing instead of hard coding it to 72 and 24. Like there's no need to do that. But I do think there are things that we can leverage, like maybe showing and hiding on mobile. Maybe I think that's something to lean into. There's the Nick Diego's block visibility plugin, which gets quite a bit of attention, which I think does a lot of things great. So maybe there's something there that Core can leverage, and that's a practice the Core is not new to. Kind of looking at what's happening in the block space and the editor space and what plugins are doing it right and what are they experimenting in, and then taking the best and the most logical approaches for Core and kind of base it off of that. So something like that is not out of the question.
I guess this leads back to as well, there's a feeling in the development community, I see this a lot actually, where in some of the communities I hang out in, that they say things like, well, WordPress is trying to be the new Wix, and maybe that plays into some of that sentiment as well, that these controls aren't in core, whereas they would be in the kind of the page builders they're used to maybe building sites for the clients with.
Yeah, I would say that I don't think it's WordPress is trying to beat the new Wix. It's just WordPress is trying to cater to non-developers as well.
Yeah,
And not that it doesn't mean that these other plugins and page builders and even third-party page builders that have all these controls are not a great solution for like you said, like for folks who are building for clients and whatnot. But just for the general, like I want a WordPress website to publish something, like those folks right now are it's still a rough situation where with editing. Like it's improved a lot, but there are still a number of loose ends to tighten up. And on the road to 6.3, I think we'll polish up a lot of those experiences on that front. But they're not concerned about how, like, is this image going to be a certain width on mobile versus not? It's whether or not it displays fine, it displays right on
yeah.
mobile. And figuring out what that right is hard to do programmatically, like within the controls, but it's not impossible.
So can you just talk us through where Gutenberg is now in terms of how it utilizes intrinsic design, so things happen kind of automatically, and how that plays into, I guess, designing themes to take part of that as well?
Yeah, so I would say there's two kind of bigger areas. The first is typography, and there's fluid typography now where you can set a value, and even you can customize that value in the UI, like say 42 pixels, like, and then it'll still respond to your device viewport at that point. It still does get smaller on a smaller viewport instead of historically where 42 meant 42 everywhere. And now theme can
Yeah,
opt out of that, and it could say, it could support, I think in theme.json, it's typography fluid false. And if it's false, then it performs like an older website would. But out of the box now, that does work. And so a theme doesn't just have to set presets for fluid type. It could be any custom values. There might be some, just referencing some Gutenberg issues. There might be something with the Gutenberg plugin that needs to be adapted to continue that support, but those kind of functionalities are important. Spacing would be the same thing. Right now, it's hard values. A theme can opt into setting min-max values for padding, for example, but I think it would be great if we did the same exact fluid type spacing values as well, where it just kind of responds. Like when you're editing it and you set it to a certain value, that becomes maybe the max value. And then when you shrink, it starts shrinking down. I would say leaning in on rows and stacks. Those are the
yeah.
two block types added maybe a year ago or so, but now they have more functionality to set a child block width to be fill or fixed. So you can say, I want this block within it to always be 50%, or I want it to take up its own space or fill in the entire space that's available. So you can kind of add those functionalities into the blocks when you're building out patterns for a theme to automatically have the intrinsic design theory throughout all of its logic.
And which bits do you think Gutenberg won't fill, I guess, or do you think it'll lean into other stuff?
I don't know that we'll have at least I don't know that there are plans to do, type in a media query value of 768 pixels. At that point, snap to something else. Like I don't know that that's going to be a core functionality.
Yeah,
Maybe I do think, like some of the block visibility things, like if you're logged in or not, or maybe if you're on a mobile and then mobile queries or whatever core provides as the standard media queries, it just does it, where you can show and hide things. I don't know that we'll do that, but that's probably something worth considering. But yeah, I don't think that there's going to be like a media query manager type
yeah,
experience.
yeah. So I had a question about site editing, because I'm kind of deep into site editing and I do loads of videos about it. So I kind of understand it, but it's still, I'm guessing for the average user, it's still not as easy to use as a classic theme. So I guess my question is, if you're going to chart where site editing is today, how does it become better and easier to use than classic themes so it really takes off? Because I don't think it's, even with 6.2, which is a step in the right direction, it still doesn't feel like you're going to put it on like a matrix. It doesn't, do you remember Steve Jobs' iPhone
Yes.
quadrant. It doesn't go top right yet. And I feel like that's kind of where it needs to go to really eat up its own market, which is the classic theme market. Do you have an image, a vision of what that looks like, or do you think it's there already?
It depends. I would say classic themes and the site editor experience are very different. So classic themes don't let you do any of the things that the site editor does, which it needs improving to do, but it does allow you, it does open up some of those avenues that were not previously available, like editing your header, editing your footer, editing the layout of your homepage. It just wasn't possible other than using a page builder experience. Sometimes some of the customizer type functionality will let you change templates, but you can edit the template within the classic
Yeah,
theme. So I think it opens up more of those avenues, but those avenues still need a lot of work. It's still, they might have like the gravel on before the actual asphalt gets applied to it. It still needs some ironing out. Um, but I would say if for really good classic theme, I mean really good block themes, the experience is starting to feel okay. There's still a lot of work to be done on managing template parts, understanding what that even means. Like it might even, I have some ideas about potentially pulling header and footer out from this template part concept and just having them like edit your header, edit your footer, and
yeah,
that becomes a little bit more of a streamlined experience. And then we have some early explorations about copying and pasting templates around and reusing existing templates on new templates. So trying to streamline the process of creating the base site when you install a theme and you want to kind of expand it a little bit. But I would say that editing experience wise, like being able to manipulate your header and your footer and the layouts of your theme, like that is a better experience for Classic because it didn't exist on Classic, even though it does need work. I would say 6.3 is going to polish a lot of these efforts, and that's one of my big focuses is how do we make this feel simple and intuitive, and just make WordPress in general more approachable. That would be my focuses, and the site editor is the prime area to really lean in on those.
yeah. I mean, it feels to me like I've used themes like Blocksy and Astra quite a bit, and they have their own
Mhm.
header builder, and it feels like, and they're really rock solid, right?
Yes.
It's really hard to break them, and it feels like that's the kind of experience that the editing a header template kind of needs to get to without killing the flexibility that you get with a block.
Yeah. And the thing is within the editor, and I guess in WordPress in general, like that functionality is there. It's just either hidden or not completely pieced all together. So it's like
Yeah,
trying to pull all these pieces and components into a logical experience that feels intuitive. Because like the foundation, the block foundation, the block supports, the theme.json, like all of it's there. We
yeah,
just have to tighten up how this fits
yeah.
together to get all the corners seamless.
I mean, you've joined at a pretty good time, so you don't have to do the boring stuff. You can just make it shiny now, right?
That's right. It's all there. It's just a matter of putting it together.
So I had one sort of product question for you, which I've been thinking about, struggling with, which is about kind of the theme market, a more general question around the block themes and what that means for the theme market. And I've been trying to imagine, you're a product guy, so I was trying to imagine if I was going to build a pro block theme, what does the pro block theme look like for you?
That's a tough one. I would say, I've always leaned in this direction with my theme shop way back. But the idea of going in on the maker, so like having a personality and a brand and a way of doing things that folks can latch onto. If they understand how you build things, they understand how your products work, then they are more adapt to really lean in on your future products. So doing some sort of membership to access, at this point, you can build out 50 or so block themes in a month or two and really hone in on that experience as a collective, not just selling individual themes. I would say, it's interesting. I'm working on a post about this, but I heard the other day from Pablo Honey, who's a designer at Automattic, or head of design for Automattic. He mentioned just like kind of casually, like that themes are more disposable than ever,
Yeah,
and like the idea that we should be exploring interesting creative themes, and if they don't work, that's fine. Like it's just like this idea of this exploratory phase that WordPress is in as a design tool, and themes are just the result of experimenting with design in WordPress and being okay with producing a theme a week, even like that should be, as a theme developer or a theme, I'm trying to use the word theme creator nowadays, like even trying to remove the developer aspect of it. But as a theme creator or artist, like that would be a challenge that would be very interesting to tackle. And I've been doing it like locally for myself. I probably am gonna apply something to my own blog soon. But designing a theme a week, like really opening up those doors and seeing what's there, but then maybe making like a membership type thing out of it, if you
Yeah.
wanted to go that route.
I guess I was heading towards, if you look at some of the most popular themes out, the pro themes out there, they're kind of multi-purpose themes like Generate Press and Astra,
Right.
Block C. And I can't see in a block theme world at the moment. It may transpire. I know the guys at Brainstorm are producing one. What the function, because they kind of grew their market because they added functionality on top of the core. Whereas it's hard to see in a block theme what you add in terms of functionality on top of core, because core is kind of, it's a canvas essentially, and you can design your
Right.
theme however you like. Do you have any thoughts on, if I gave you that task today, how you'd approach that with a
Yeah.
product?
Yeah. It's the sum of all parts. So, it's, if you design a system of patterns that really flex out a bunch of different ways for your theme collection, and then you design blocks that are, the next generation of block editing experiences for, for events or for products, like those actual functionalities, and those are, plugins to add on to your collection of themes.
Yeah.
I think that would be the route to go, because really, like if you look at like event management, even it's still clunky. It's still out of editor experiences. I think you could really hone in on a solution that where you can create events from the editor experience and post like the most current event would be a block, perhaps. And really, and it would be one block that leverages a lot of core blocks even through inner blocks. So you don't have to build the heading or build the any of the paragraph type component or even the buttons. So it's really not difficult. It's just a matter of exploring this newer wave of editing in this system of blocks and bringing it to other plugins and experiences
Yeah.
that would move the needle on the theme side. The themes are just the result of all the functionality and components that you put together.
Yeah. And it feels like a lot of the block libraries at the moment are kind of playing in the same, well, they are playing in exactly the same space, right? They're just adding
Right. Yeah.
extra plumbing into core, whereas no one's gone, not that I know of, gone very niche yet, which maybe is the next stage for block development.
Yeah. I think that I don't know that I would say there's a lack of innovation on the block editing front. Maybe maybe lack of inspiration is probably the better way to put it. So I would definitely lean into those experiences where you don't have to leave the editor and you can still create, maybe even create custom post types if you needed to for events, like from the editing experience.
Yeah.
Like if your block had an admin view of your block, like where you could see all your events, and then the event block, like of its own view, like kind of like how the HTML block is your preview, like maybe something like that, but it would be interesting to explore. And those situations, like those sort of experiences, I think will win out in the long run over the classic, going to an add all or, an add event page and then creating a post and then going back to an edit view and then having this very disjointed experience. Even creating single custom post types from that, I don't think that that's the futuristic way of publishing a WordPress.
Cool. Brilliant. That's all. Oh, actually, no, I did have one more question specifically
Yes.
around uh, mobile menus and the ability to have a different
Yeah.
mobile menu to main menu. Where's just it's a very specific question to end with, but where's that at?
That's a good one. There's definitely some room for improvement. Right now, the mobile menu is it is what it is. It's not like it's fine, but it's not impressive. It's not curated experiences that you could really manage. I think that I know there are efforts to move it towards a template part type functionality where you have a mobile menu template part per se, and then you can drop in blocks. You can even have different menu items if you want. I don't know how I feel about that, but you could add social icons at the bottom, a button. You can really kind of style it, and that becomes your menu whenever you
Okay.
hit the nav block. Um, I don't know if that is slated for sure in 6.3, but it is a priority to start ironing out what that looks and feels like. And that ties into some of the concepts around making headers and footers simpler as well. And because it's very similar in the same type of idea. Like everyone has a header, everyone has a footer, and everyone, or most everyone, will need a mobile menu. Like, how do you create experiences around these similar type of componentry, where you can maybe focus in on just editing the mobile menu and then focus back out to your regular site, and the header footer, same exact type of functionality.
Well done if you made it to the end. A huge thank you to Rich for taking up so much of his time to answer some of those questions. I think there's some really interesting answers. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think we want to see more breakpoint responsive controls in core Gutenberg, or are you a fan of this intrinsic design philosophy? Thanks again for watching. If you like this video, if you can hit the like button now, it would be amazing, because it really does help spread the word of the channel and the video. And also, every time you do hit that like button, our cats get a little treat. So thank you so much for watching again. If you want to see more videos around Gutenberg and WordPress, hit that subscribe button and you'll be notified every time I release a new one. Keep well, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.